these words lightly. I think it's time to move on from Matthew Stafford. I think that's justifiable on both parties because the Lions are not just, hey, let's hire a coach and see if we can fix this away. Because Matthew's going into, I believe, which is going to be his 13th season, maybe his 14th season. It did not work in Detroit. And so they've got to make the decision to move on from Matthew Stafford, trade him, and build for the future. Because it is now a rebuild. Because everybody that's on that football team player-wise is very much custom fit for what Matt Patricia wanted to do. So I think that's the next real decision that the Lions organization needs to make. The second thing is this. Don't fall in love with just an X's and O's guy. I know everybody wants Sean McVay. He's a unicorn. You better go find a leader, someone that has foresight, someone that understands that city, someone that understands the frustration of that city, and someone that can organize and galvanize and distribute responsibility. And the head coach has got to bring somebody that's got great X's and O's. Offensively, we are in an era of football that you need to be outstanding at it. So hire somebody that has foresight at that position. They've got to bring an offensive-minded or a great offensive-minded offensive coordinator with them. Obviously, a good defensive coordinator, but it needs to be a rebuild mode, and that's where the Lions are.
Indeed. A dozen seasons in the league. Next year will be year 13 somewhere, whether it's Detroit or elsewhere. Dan, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Great stuff, D.O.
All right, Dan.
Key, just for 1 minute, I got to get your opinion on Stafford. Also, big story percolating in Detroit. Rumors are rumors. Hey, there is a college coach in Ann Arbor that's proven himself to be a really good coach in the NFL. You can connect the dots there if you want. A lot of people in Detroit are talking about that. That may be fantasy. But would you move on from Stafford?
I probably would because he has some value for somebody out there. And, you know, we don't need to be trying to get a top 5 pick and all that unnecessary nonsense, but get some value for him, depending on what the salary cap hit is, and then move on and rebuild the whole entire situation. Because much like Dan said, what has happened is Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn made a decision to build a team a certain way. And now the new head coach and the new front office have to come in and see what players could fit the system that they will employ now. And if Matt's part of it, then great. And if not, then we can move on from it.
Indeed. We're moving on from last place to first place in a division in a span of 3 weeks. And boy, does Key like reminding me of that. That's coming up after SportsCenter. You probably know the deal. Broncos quarterback Jeff Driscoll testing positive for the coronavirus on Thursday. His close contacts, quarterback Drew Lock, quarterback Brett Rippon, and the practice squad quarterback Blake Bortles, were put into isolation because of their close contact being in and around the quarterback room with Driscoll. As for Drew Lock, the quote-unquote franchise quarterback, he did say yesterday, an honest mistake, but one I will own. I sincerely apologize, and I fully understand why these safety precautions are so important. Doing the right thing for a majority of the time is not good enough. We should add the NFL investigated and found out that when the Broncos quarterbacks were asked about whether they were wearing a mask, they were initially not forthcoming, which is another reason many people believe the league said, okay, if you're going to lie to us after the fact, you're going to play this game. If you're wondering, the Broncos can't sign another quarterback and play him on Sunday. When you sign a guy, you got to wait about 6 days to make sure they can go through all the testing. With all of that said, let's bring in Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL analyst, spent a dozen years under center.
D.O.
And he joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. D.O., good morning. I just kind of set the scene there in this debacle for the Broncos. Who's to blame for all this?
The Broncos quarterbacks. This one bothers me so much, Z, because, you know, as a young backup quarterback, you pray to God for the opportunity to get on the field in the NFL. Because a lot of times for backup quarterbacks, it's about, you know, catching a lucky break. Like, you just get the opportunity to get on the field. And you don't have any idea what one game can do for your career. I mean, imagine Matt Flynn. Remember years ago, Matt Flynn got to play for the Green Bay Packers, and all of a sudden, he got a ton of money because he balled out against the Lions, and he gets a huge free agent contract from the Seattle Seahawks. You don't know what one game can do. And all the time, you're getting ready for that moment, for you just to catch your break. And now you don't get it, Brett Rippon. And now Blake Bortles, a guy that's trying to get back into the NFL, you don't get that break because you can't follow simple protocol. Like, you can't be an adult and do exactly what gets told to you by the NFL. And you did let your football team down. And you did let yourselves down because you couldn't do something that you thought wasn't that big a deal. Drew Lock, I'm supposed to give you the keys to my franchise. I'm supposed to believe that you can be a billion-dollar CEO and you can follow simple protocol. I don't care if you like it. I don't care. That's what is getting told for you to do by the people upstairs. And now you missed out on your opportunity to get on the field, Brett Rippon. And Blake Bortles trying to get back in the NFL. You missed out on your opportunity because you couldn't do that. And you can't go home now and tell your buddies or tell your girlfriend or tell your wife, I just needed a chance. I never got my chance. Yeah, you did. You had your chance. I don't care how the opportunity presented itself. You had your opportunity and you blew it because you couldn't follow simple guidelines. And that's on them. And I feel bad for the Broncos as an organization that now this brings the biggest question to mind for me when it comes to Drew Lock. How can I trust you with my franchise when I can't trust you to do things that you don't want to do? And so I feel bad for them as an organization, but that's on those players. They completely failed. Those quarterbacks completely failed their organization, and they failed themselves.
Dan, someone that did not let their team down yesterday is Tyreek Hill of the Kansas City Chiefs. How could the Buccaneers allow him to just go nuts like that on them?
Yeah, Key, it's a great point, man. I think the Buccaneers, it's really been highlighted on their offensive side this year, but the Buccaneers right now are the team that we're going to do what we do. We're just, this is who we are. We're going to play man coverage. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
Like, just because you're a good man coverage team doesn't mean that you should do it against Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And that's what just showed up early on in that game. It was like the Buccaneers said, you know what? No. We're gonna be who we are, and we're gonna do what we do on defense, and that's play in your face man coverage, not against Tyreek Hill. You don't do that. We all know that, Key. You and I have sat there on the NFL Live set and said, don't play man coverage against these guys. They're too good. And the fact that the Bucs came out yesterday, and especially in that first quarter, and did that, is the reason that one of the big reasons why they lost that football game.
It's puzzling because the NFL is such a copycat league. One of the things that I've always learned is I'm just going to somewhat take what the Raiders have been able to do to them over the last 2 games and implement that into my defensive scheme because I got that package somewhere. I got it. I can play the same way the Raiders play, but whatever, man. So now we got Jalen Hurts taking first-team reps in Philadelphia, Dan. Carson Wentz is kind of put on notice. Doesn't mean a whole lot to me that a backup is taking first-team reps. What do you make of it?
Yeah, my thoughts are that the organization has a differing opinion on what should happen because I think that if the organization saw the situation and the players the same way, because of the immense struggles that this offense and Carson Wentz are having so far, everyone would go, well, listen, it's time for Jalen Hurts. We drafted him in the 2nd round. And I understand they drafted him to be a developmental player, but they also drafted him in the 2nd round. And so this would be the time and this would be the moment to go, okay, it's going to be the Jalen Hurts show. And we're going to give Carson Wentz a week on the bench, or we're going to see what we have moving forward, no matter if we win this division or not this year. But the fact that it's just, hey, we're going to give him a little bit more reps means that, or at least it tells me that there's a differing opinion in the organization. Maybe the general manager has one viewpoint and the head coach has another viewpoint, or the owner has one viewpoint and the team has a different viewpoint. Now, that being said, I don't expect this to be a, hey, Jalen Hurts got 25 snaps at quarterback situation. I think that this is going to be something where very specific 3rd down package. This offense has been absolutely dreadful on 3rd down. So a very different specific 3rd down package, maybe in the red zone where, 3rd and 3 or less, Jalen Hurts comes on the field. Carson Wentz come off the field. Now we can play 11-on-11 football, or down in the red zone where we can get +1 in the quarterback run game. Again, the opportunity to play 11-on-11 football. But I will say this, and I know this is a little off topic, but the Daniel Jones injury, with the Giants, now everybody in Philadelphia is on the clock. Like, if you can't win the division this year with Daniel Jones now hurt for we'll see how long, and the Washington football team with their quarterback situation, Dwayne Haskins not playing and Kyle Allen getting hurt, and now Alex Smith playing, and then the Cowboys, we all know, if you can't win the division this year, you're on the clock because now everything has been served on a platter to you.
Dan, I know you told us what you think the Eagles would do. What would you do if you have full autonomy? How would you handle the Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts situation?
Yeah, there'd be no question Carson Wentz would be my starter, and I'd get him to play really good football. I think that Carson Wentz still is a high-level talent in this league. I said this last week, Jay. I think there's two really kind of groupings of quarterbacks in the NFL. There's thinkers and there's reactors. Some of the thinkers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, I think Dak Prescott is one of the better thinkers in the NFL. And then there's reactors, and I think Carson Wentz is a reactor. And there's some guys that are both. He's a really very much so a thinker before the snap, but he's a reactor after the snap. I wouldn't sit him in the pocket a lot. I'd get him on the move a ton, somewhat like the Tennessee Titans do with Ryan Tannehill. And I'd let his athleticism kind of marry that football team. And if you watch the game over the last 2 or 3 weeks for Carson Wentz, I can see that there is the overwhelming evidence that he is scared to make mistakes right now. That you can almost see the little angel and the devil kind of sitting on his shoulder going, don't turn the ball over. Don't be risky with the football. Just take the check down. Well, that forces you to play cautious football. That forces you to take a quarterback's stinger away. I would get him on the move a ton. I'd create a quick passing game that created easier throws. I'd get my guys out in space, Miles Sanders. I'd use Jalen Reagor completely differently. I think Jalen Reagor is a true wide receiver in the NFL, not a gimmick or a gadget wide receiver. I would never sit him in the pocket, especially in an offensive line that's been absolutely decimated by injury. So you can't coach talent. I know that at that position, and he still has a ton of it.
Indeed, Carson Wentz, a reactor. Could be a nuclear reactor because fans in Philly are about to go nuclear if this thing blows up for sure. Last thing, our show began on August 17th, and the single biggest moment from a social media perspective on the show, hands down, is this from Dan Orlovsky. A couple of months ago, what you're about to hear was seen over 1 million